What's up, going on, legends? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be covering how to find the best field of view, or FOV, in Modern Warfare 2. This is a newer feature for those of us on the console. However, it has been available for PC for some time. Now, this is something that can be a little bit confusing. So first, we're going to go ahead and talk about the differences between lower and higher FOV and some of the stipulations that could come with it, so you guys can better understand exactly what you need to be looking for when trying to decide what is the right setting for you. This is definitely one of those settings that can be different for everybody. So it's important to not listen to what other people's settings are and kind of adjust it for yourself, because it's definitely going to be different for everyone. So in order to first obviously decide where you want to be, you should know that by default, you are going to be sitting at an 80 FOV, which is what we're looking at here. And in past titles, even going back to the old Modern Warfare 2, it was even lower at some points. Essentially what this means is it is a picture of the observable world that you can actually see on your screen at some time. So obviously the higher that you go up in the value, the more you're going to be able to see on the screen. And the lower you go on the value side, you obviously be more zoomed in, making it a little bit harder to see further, but obviously it will make things bigger. So we'll get into that as we go over this a little bit more. So by default, again, we are at 80 here. And as you can see, this is what we have to see on our map. Now let's go ahead and go into the settings so we can actually turn it up a bit. It's going to be under the graphics settings, field of view, FOV is right here. I'm going to go ahead just for fun, turning all the way up to 120, just so we can kind of see exactly the difference between 80 and obviously 120. So now that we've done that, we have a lot more on our screen here. As you can see, things aren't quite as zoomed in. We are able to see a tree on this right side that we weren't able to see. Same thing goes for the tree on the left. You just have so much more that you can see. However, at this point now, you can also tell that some of the stuff that was a little bit further is even further as far as perspective goes, meaning it's going to be a little bit more difficult to see. So by jumping all the way to 120, which some people might do, you actually might be putting yourself at a disadvantage. Just depends on your obvious playstyle and maybe just how well you can see or things are visible depending on the screens you're playing on. So when you go all the way to 120, things are going to get a lot smaller, especially those people or enemies that are in the distance, which could lead to you not even being able to see them. So maybe jumping to 120 might be a little bit much, and it's really kind of hard to decide exactly what's right. But a lot of this is going to be playing on the fact that you want to find the happy medium. You don't want things to be too far away to where you can't really see them, but you also don't want to be so zoomed in that you can't really see the area around you. It'll, again, going to be different for everybody. My highest recommendation is to go from somewhere between 90 and 110. 95 is pretty common a lot across some of the pro players, as it seems to be a pretty nice even level. And let's go ahead and actually jump back into here real quick, go to our graphics and turn it down a little to around 100, as that's going to be kind of a more middle ground here. So now, as you can see, we are a bit zoomed in again. We cannot see the tree on the far right, can't see the tree on the far left, but those things in the distance now are going to be a little bit more zoomed in. Now, this is definitely a little bit wider than you would have seen by default, which allows you to get a little bit more visibility. Maybe that allows you to see people that you wouldn't have normally seen. So the reality is here, if you're going all the way up to 120 and you're noticing there's a ton of people that are taking you out, you're not able to see everybody that's in those far distances, you've probably gone entirely too far. Now, obviously, if you're zoomed way in and you got people coming around corners to the right of you or the left of you, and you just don't seem to be picking up on them, maybe you're zoomed in a little bit too close. I mean, you can go much more zoomed in than even 80. I just definitely don't recommend that. And I honestly think the default is a little bit too regular as well. It is definitely better to move up to at least 90, which we can go ahead and check out real quick here. And at 90, you're going to still get a good amount of visibility. Even at 110, you're going to get a good amount of visibility. You're not going to be kind of stuck, not being able to see people, or being so zoomed in that you can see people, but there's just people sneaking up on all different sides of you. So we'll go ahead and put it on 90, which is probably a pretty good starting place for most of you. And obviously you guys can tweak it from there. I just definitely don't recommend you jump all the way to 120. So here we are at 90. We have a pretty good amount of visibility here. We can still see the stairs on this building here. We can still see the left side pretty clearly. And we're also not so zoomed out that we can't really see the people in the distance. Now, there's another option that is a part of field of view that is kind of important as well. So if you are tweaking your field of view, you're absolutely going to want to be aware of this, so that way you know whether or not you have the right setting up. So now if we dive into our settings once again and we go over to where the field of view is, we're going to notice that it does say show more. Now, when you do show more, you have an ADS field of view as well. This is definitely something you're going to want to take a look at. Now, by default, it's unaffected. which means your ADS zooms to a value closer to the field of view setting, only applies to low magnification levels, including iron sights. So essentially, it'll kind of tweak your ADS field of view to sort of match the field of view that you are set at. Now, if you choose this to go independent, you will zoom to the field of view that is essentially the default value. So if you are at 120 FOV and you have it on independent, it's going to zoom to like 80 FOV. So we're going to go ahead and switch that real quick here to independent just so I can show you guys exactly what's going on here. And as you can see here, we are zoomed at our normal FOV. We have yet to hit ADS. When we ADS, there's a significant zoom in when we're aiming down sight. So essentially this will get you back to where you were before you change the setting at all. It'll be about 80 FOV, and you'll be able to control your recoil this way. And obviously it'll zoom in on opponents, making it a little bit more zoomed. Now, this essentially isn't always a positive thing because it might look like you have more recoil than you actually do when running this. And obviously there's a ton of people out there who believe further your FOV is, the less recoil you'll have, but that's not exactly true. It just in some cases can overall affect exactly how well or easy it is to control that recoil. So essentially at this point, you're not going to have any difference or notice any difference when trying to control recoil at this FOV, whether it's higher or not. Just for the simple fact that you are running independent, it's going back to that default value. So again, we're going to go back into our settings. We're going to go in here and we're going to go ahead and switch this to affected. I'm actually going to go ahead and put my field of view back to where I normally have it. I like to run 110, not the highest, obviously not the lowest. It's a good place to be, and it allows me to see exactly what I need to see on my screen. Everybody's different depending on the sizes of their screen and how clear it is. All of that stuff does matter. So the setting will be different for most people. So let's go ahead and get back into the game here. And like I said, now you see the ADS is a little bit more normal. You do still zoom in a little bit, but the field of view is still maintained once you are aimed down sight. And this will make it appear as though you have lower recoil, but reality is it's just going to be smaller values that you're moving up and down. So essentially you will still have the exact same recoil as somebody who runs the lowest FOV or even the highest FOV. It's just going to look different on the screen. So if I go ahead now and I decide to shoot my gun, I can sit there and obviously control the recoil that way. Now, just real quick as a comparison, we'll go ahead and switch it back one last time over to independent just so I can show you guys how it looks. Look how much more it zooms in. And then obviously it's going to look a little bit more chaotic. Although the recoil patterns are the same of the weapon, it's going to make it have a different appearance. Now, the last setting in here under the FOV that I want to quickly go over essentially is going to be this weapon field of view. Now, it does say default, narrow, and wide, and it suggests that weapon will look bigger if it's narrow, and it'll look smaller if it's wide. However, no matter how many times I've changed this, I can't tell any difference. So maybe there's a bug that they plan on addressing in the future. So you don't really need to mess with this at all. Now, essentially, at this point, you guys should have a better understanding of the field of view. You should have a little bit better idea of how to justify if it's a good FOV for you or not. It's, again, going to matter a bit basically on what you're playing on. If you're playing on a giant TV, you could play on 120, you may not notice anything. If you're playing on a smaller screen, the higher you go, the more difficult it might actually become to see people, which would in turn would actually put you at a disadvantage. Now, that's going to wrap things up for us here. Hopefully you guys will be able to dive into a private match now and find your best FOV setting a little bit easier. Thank you guys for all the support in today's video, all the support on the channel, and I look forward to seeing y'all in the next one. Peace.